Have you ever noticed that when you try to latch on to the past, it makes for one of the most cringe things you've ever seen? Well, that's what the Loud kids found out in the episode I'm going to talk about today. So join me as I, SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, bring you another retro review from past seasons of the Loud House. Cue the intro! Today's episode is Room and Hoard. In this episode, the kids find their old childhood toys and try to convince their parents they still play with them when they feel too attached to give them away. This was one of the most uncomfortable episodes I ever had to sit through. That's mostly because of the kids' behavior and how they went about using their old stuff and then trying to hide the new stuff they wanted. Only to a degree do I sympathize with them wanting to keep their old stuff, because I'm sort of the same way with a few things from my childhood. One example being my Mighty Morphin Power Rangers VHS collection. Some things are just too sentimental and nostalgic to give away, and that's why I'm not nearly as critical with the Loud kids as others. Seeing those old things in the attic probably brought back some fond memories from their youth, and maybe that's why they felt so attached to them. Be that as it may, watching them trying to prove they still use their old stuff was very unsettling. If not super annoying in the twins' case with the Little Froggy song, or in Lisa's case with her infant fecal samples, just plain disgusting. By the way, it should be noted how everything Lisa did in this episode involved literal crap, whether it was from her or Charles the dog. I know this isn't the first time she's had a fascination with it, but it was still, like I said, disgusting. Anyway, most of the kids were acting like 3-year-olds when using their childhood toys, and they really went out of their way to prove they still needed them. Lincoln was by far the cringiest when he went the extra mile by not only acting like a toddler, but also dressing like one. It was even worse when Flip did the same thing towards the end. Of course, things got more ridiculous when the kids started getting a lot of new stuff and somehow figured the best place to hide it all would be in their living room. Why they felt the need to stash everything in the chimney, air vents, and on top of a lampshade instead of their bedrooms is something I really don't understand. But regardless, a freak domino effect caused all their stuff to spill out in front of their parents, and thus we have a classic example of the typical liar revealed moment. The parents agreed earlier in the episode that the kids could keep their old stuff, but they would have to give away something old if they wanted to get something new. That was a fair trade-off, and yet the kids felt they could have it all without making a sacrifice. Now, speaking of the parents, the most I can say about them is the way they handled themselves was a weird mix of being sensible but also lacking empathy for their kids. They weren't wrong to say they needed to clear out space in the attic, and criticizing their kids for not upholding their end of the bargain by bringing home more stuff without getting rid of anything old to compensate was very justified. However, they never really took the time to understand why their kids felt so attached to their old stuff in the first place. They just looked at their childhood toys as mere junk and saw them as mostly an inconvenience. So, in a sense, the parents were both mostly right in their attitudes, but also kinda wrong in how they approach this act of childhood hoarding. Nonetheless, the kids see the error of their ways and finally agree to get rid of their old stuff, which brings me to the positives. As silly as it was, I thought it was adorable seeing Luann and Luna playing with their cardboard puppet show, and Lenny pretending to be a doctor for that fashion emergency game. The sweetest moments from the Louds happened during the final minute when they were giving away their old stuff to little kids. Even Lynn Jr. helping that little girl with the basketball hoop was super adorable. If only she could have been that gentle and sitting bull, you know? And finally, I experienced one of those I feel so old moments when the characters mention a VHS and then Luna pulls one out. Just hearing the word and then physically seeing it just hits in a way we can all relate to. You know you're getting old when you feel nostalgic for an outdated piece of home entertainment. Overall, this episode is pretty bad in how it handles the main characters having a hoarding problem and how they go about proving they can't give up any of their old stuff from childhood. But like I said, I'm not as critical as others. I can relate to the emotional and nostalgic attachment to their stuff, so them wanting to hold on to their past isn't necessarily a terrible thing. However, all of them acting like toddlers and trying to hide new stuff without giving up anything old was pushing their emotional attachment in the wrong direction. The parents had the right idea about getting rid of some of the old stuff, but they could have been a little more empathetic instead of acting as if their kids' toys were merely outdated relics and no longer meaningful in the slightest. The lesson the episode ultimately goes for is, even though you still have a fondness for the toys that made your childhood great, eventually you move move on to bigger things, and it's better to give those old toys to kids who will actually use them. Giving away your old toys creates the opportunity for younger kids to have a great childhood the same way you once did. In other words, this was like a different take on the episode Hand-Me-Downer in terms of the valuable life lesson of moving on from old things and onto newer things. Of course, this lesson is not enough to make up for the bulk of the story and character presentation, but it certainly saves it from getting an extremely bad score. With that said, I give Room and Hoard a 4.9 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Room and Hoard. So I gotta ask, what did you guys think of this episode? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.